we missed the community era of social media. All we got was algorithms and influencers and ads and all that kind of stuff. And not to say that we won't, have some of that at some point, but we really want it to be like, I can come here, find my tribe, find the people that are into that super specific thing that we all love, and get to know each other that way and build relationships.
All right, here he is.
How are you?
I am well. We're all a little tired, as you can imagine. Haven't slept much.
Well, yeah. Take me into a day in the life of a founder of a social media startup. I know you said earlier, I may not sleep for the rest of the year. Like, are you? And there's 10 people who work for Spill.
Less
than 10. What is your day like?
My day. Wow. There's no standard day. There's no, routine with this at all. I think I think any founder can relate to this too, that you sort of set out with a, distant shore ahead, and you're like, we're going this way, and here's our plan. And, best laid plans, as is famously known, never go according to. And so, but honestly, it's been so much fun, coming from an experience where, I was working in social media for Twitter for 3 years, and I did social media for pretty much the last 15 years at major brands and stuff. And, that's a wild space too. You never know when something can kind of pop off, or there's an opportunity to sort of dive in. But startup life, whole other thing. So
is it like you're in the emergency room? Is it like you're in the fire department? Like is fires constantly burning? Like what's the deal?
It's a great, actually building a city is not a bad metaphor, I would say, because you're trying to do it all. I was using the metaphor of like building a house where it's like, you're laying the plumbing, the electrical, people are trying to move in, you're building the roof as people are, trying to find shelter, all of these things. Yeah, you're really doing it all at once. But I think it all starts with a vision, right? You have to have a vision and understanding kind of who you're building for, what you're building for, and what is the problem you're trying to solve.
Well, let's go. What is the vision?
Yeah. The vision, Spill. Really, the vision is to become the next great place to discuss and discover culture worldwide. That's what we've been saying pretty much from the beginning. And I think we all know that there's other places that, that has existed online in various forms, but it really hasn't been built by people who, are the culture drivers themselves and, understand how culture moves in the space. And so we really wanted to build something that really hasn't been seen before, that, of course, centers Black folks, queer folks, other marginalized groups who are always driving the new lexicon, the new trends, the new dances, whatever, but getting the most hate, right? Not getting credited, not getting rewarded the way we should. And so that's really the vision, is to build a next generation social platform that's the de facto place to discuss and discover culture.
I've been in the Spill world for several weeks now. It's joyful. It's uplifting, right? Twitter is constantly triggering and bringing me down, right? Like I go into Spill and there's so much joy, and it feels like kind of like being on the yard at HBCU. Everybody is happy and they feel affirmed and seen, but you are at an infancy stage as far as, can you say how many people are on Spill right now?
So we have over, at this moment, 175,000 people who've created accounts on the platform. It's growing every day. And yeah, we've only been available. And again, this is a beta. I want to stress that for folks who may not be familiar with that term. Beta just means in startup world that we're testing. We're learning, we're trying to get people in there to help us, validate some of these ideas and these theses that we had, that if we built a platform that centers Black folks, queer folks, other marginalized groups from the beginning, wouldn't that make an incredible experience, something that we really haven't seen before? And so beta is just testing. So we have over 175,000 beta testers on the platform right now.
I feel like Black Planet is the only other group that ever tried to do this. Is that right?
I'm sure there's a lot of other entrepreneurs who have looked at this problem, because this is a persistent problem, right? Yeah. Like getting, Black folks online, queer folks online, women online, getting abuse is, been there since the beginning of the internet, right? So there's been a lot of other folks that I know have tried to make, attempts to solve this problem, because it's a worthy problem to solve. And I think Black Planet, credit to those teams out there. I think, those are the early days of social media. It was more like message boards and profiles and more MySpacey. I think they created something that a lot of people found value in. But yeah, we're in a very different era, right? Yeah. We have 15, 20 years of social media under our belt right now. We know that this is not just cute little websites. This is really powerful. This is the most powerful form of media that exists today, in my opinion. And so we're trying to build on those learnings from the last 15, 20 years to make something better.
Do you have a target of when you will, just so I understand the language, you're in beta, what would you call the next stage when it's open to everybody?
Yeah, so we're in what we call invite-only beta. So it's obviously you need a code to get access to Spill, and that's not to gatekeep, as some people have speculated or anything. It's just to manage the inflow. And so the next step would be an open beta where anyone can download the product, try it out for themselves. There's no invite codes needed, and so we're aiming towards. I'm learning very good lessons about not giving specific dates, because building technology, all kinds of interesting things can happen along the way. But our aim is for later this year to be an open beta where anyone can download the product.
So, I mean, the big question, so you don't want to say by December we'll be open to we don't know. We're still working this out. Yeah. We're building the plane as we fly it. So we don't know when we're going to get there.
Exactly. And for context, we have been, my co-founder and I, Davaris Brown, we met at Twitter 4 years ago. We started at Twitter on the same day. We were the only few Black folks in our new hire group. This is common in tech, and we were like, all right, we're going to be homies. And it turns out we just have really complementary skill sets. But when we, decided to really do this, I got laid off part of the first wave of the Elon, cutbacks and everything last November. That was really when we, began. So this whole endeavor is about 8 months old. This is infancy. And our goals, I just have to say, when we announced this, the idea of Spill, there was no product, there was no screens, there was no nothing back in December of last year. We would have been happy with 2,000-3,000 people being like, hey, they worked at Twitter, I'll give it a shot. 50,000 people in a week joined our wait list. Every time we have, taken a step forward with this, endeavor, it's always exceeded our expectations. The demand has blown us away. Our goal was to be at 100,000 people, new members signing up by the end of this year. That was our goal by the end of the year. And we're like double that almost, in July. We've had, the invite only beta. Like, it's not easy to get this, get into Spill right now. And it's, it's been incredible. We've been out for, a little over 4 weeks. So this continues to be an adventure that is teaching us and, causing us to have to reinvent our, vision even, for what this can be and should be.
So one of the big questions that I've been having is, how do you keep it Black? Because it feels very Black as I move through Spill now. But when you get to open and anybody can join, is there a way that you can keep it Black and queer and focused on marginalized folks?
Well, yeah, I think a couple of things. So first, this is our mission as a company, right? I think it starts there. We are always going to have as our core at Spill to center Black folks, queer folks, other marginalized groups. So no matter how we grow and we will grow and it will expand, I'm sure to areas that we can't even imagine right now, our values as a company begin there and will always center there. So I think that matters a lot, especially when you look at ownership of other platforms, right? The intention of the people who are building the thing matters. It empowers certain groups to really feel like, okay, this is our space and all of that. So it will always be a core value of Spill. I'd say secondly, how we elevate, different things as a brand. Last week we did our first sort of live Spill activation where we invited everybody to watch The Blackening together at the same time, like as a family. Let's show up and live Spill together and chat about it. Those are the types of things we're going to continue to do. We're going to be at Essence Fest or Afrotech or Afrofuture festivals, things of that nature, that will continue again to show that we're centering the communities that we come from and the communities that we set out to serve. But yeah, it's not a perfect challenge. You can't gate this stuff. We can't, be like, there's only certain people that can come on the platform. Right. That's, antithetical to the whole idea of social. But it is absolutely going to be a mission of ours, period, for the future of this company.
Can you use the algorithm or train the algorithm to uplift Black and brown and queer voices?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we are already doing, frankly, is focusing on specific groups of creators. So let's talk about Black women, right? Black women over-index on heavy social media consumption and media consumption, to nth degrees, as we all know. Black Twitter was powered by Black women, Black Talk, all these different things. So we have been very clear in saying, we are catering, especially in these early days, to helping uplift Black women on our platform. We're designing algorithms that really tailor to the types of topics, the types of, creative opportunities, the ways in which, a great example is a young woman on the platform just yesterday tagged me in a new series of colorways that she wanted to pitch us. So she was like, hey, we have these different colors that you can change Spill to, as you know, and they're named after different types of tea. So she was like, I've got hibiscus, you guys have hibiscus. I've got chamomile. I've got matcha. I've got butterfly pea. We're going to do this, this, and this. I want to work with you guys on that. And we're reaching out to her and we're going to figure out ways in which to platform her. So I think it's also us listening. And I think that's the biggest difference that people are going to see as, the months and years unfold. This isn't just, once a year, the platform throws a party for Black History Month or Pride or something like that. We are always going to be in conversation with our audience and dialed into the communities that we're centering to elevate them.
I mean, the notion of the live Spill around something around the Blackening really takes me back to what I loved about Black Twitter when it was really hot. I remember one night coming home and was searching around. There's really nothing on TV, but the Image Awards are on. Like, you know what? Actually, I was like, there's nothing on TV. And then I jumped on Twitter and all these people were talking about the Image Awards. So I was like, all right, let me see what's good. And now I'm watching the Image Awards, which is largely boring to me. But because the Black Twitter community is joking and laughing and inciting and whatever, I'm like, yo, this is interesting watching it with all of y'all. So when you can do a live Spill event around something that matters to us, like now I'm really engaged.
Exactly. And what we're excited about, what people are going to see in the coming months is we have all these really great features, because that was something that, on Twitter, having worked there, that was hard to coordinate, right? Like people, I don't know if you remember the Beyonce Homecoming live tweet. There was like Jasmine Lawson and the Strong Black League crew over at Netflix. They, got Beyonce to retweet, hey, we're going to watch Homecoming as a family. And it became this big, amazing thing. But like Twitter as a platform really didn't do anything to like productize that. And so we actually have a product called Tea Parties, which allows people to create these watch parties. And this is coming out probably in the next like couple weeks or so. Again, I will never promise dates, but coming soon. And that's going to empower people to really coordinate and have these kind of like virtual events, and eventually it's going to bleed into IRL as well. So if you're at a concert, you're at a sporting event, you're just at a conference, and you want to like have that conversation, that second screen experience together with your IRL experience, we're building for all of that. So yeah, it is a special thing that was unique that we got as well.
I want to go into the past, but I'm super interested in the future of Spill. right now, we as users, as spillionaires, are being. Boy, you laugh when I say it, right?
I love this billionaires. Man. I love it. So good.
When I am being poised to make a GIF, right? That's what the app is encouraging me to do. I don't need to use a picture, but it makes it super easy to do that. Do you is this it? Do you see it moving toward, oh, now you can add video, and so it grows in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the meme formats you're talking about, adding text to an image, to a GIF, to a video, has been a lingua franca of the internet since the beginning of web browsers, basically. And we've seen this type of culture making and meaning making happen, in so many different ways, but especially for Black communities online, where when I was at HBO, one of our favorite things was watching Game of Thrones with Black Twitter, with Dem Thrones, and taking all the, like these hilarious sort of scenes and adding totally different context to it. It is amazing. But again, most platforms didn't build for this. And so that's one of the ways in which we were like, let's try this. It was all a test. We didn't know if people would want to do that. We also allow, you can just spill with text, right? As you know, it could be very simple. But most people started doing it. I'd say probably 75% of the spills on our platform contain some form of media mixed with text. And, it's just fun. It's super shareable. You can, sharing memes is a love language.
Yeah.
If you're, you got real friends if you're sending you really good memes. And so we wanted to just make that super easy and build for that. But yeah, we're working on other things that are coming down the line. There's some fun stuff with generative AI that's going to make it even easier, especially for like brands and creators who want to do a lot, in real time, but maybe don't have huge teams or don't feel like I'm so funny or I'm so creative. We're going to have tools to help people get involved.
I mean, I spend a lot of time on TikTok and on Instagram, and I know, and purposefully not on Twitter anymore. It's partly politically, but partly because I feel Elon pushing me out the door. Like, if you don't want to pay for a blue check, then I don't care about you. And we could get it more. I hear the side. We could get into Twitter more. But I notice Instagram feels like parallel play. Right? Mm-hmm. I am doing something, you are doing something. Are we interacting? Not really, right? There's not like a lot of retweeting.
It's the highlights.
Yeah.
It's the highlights. It's not as much of a conversation.
TikTok, we are having a conversation. Everybody's riffing off of, let's do a Wes Anderson movie. You did it at the beach. You did it at your dentist office, whatever. Or I'm stitching your comment and like, how could you have said that about the strike? We're all jumping on you, whatever it is. So do you see Spill developing toward that more? We're talking to because there's not a lot of talking to each other yet, but it's a small group, right? But it's like, what do you want it to be? Do you want us to be communicating to each other or more of the parallel play sort of vibe?
Well, I think definitely not just highlights of your life. I think, as you know, you've been on the platform. It's people are incredibly it's hard to say this, with a straight face, but positive, right? Like,
no, they are.
Everybody's like, "Good morning, Spill family. Good morning, cousins. Good morning, Spillionaires."
The spills will be, I love it here. That's the whole spill.
It's like, and there was some great spills about, some people being like, "I don't know what to do here," and they're just like vibe, like vibe, right? Like you were just like, I'm on an edible, I'm spilling, I'm like just going down, I'm just going down, talking to a bunch of people that I don't know, and it's great, so I think, community is definitely what we're obviously focused on first, right? We want to create a place where people feel like they belong, where it's a sort of core identity, that it is, positive, like you said, and uplifting. And I think positivity, quote unquote, can seem like obnoxious or, sort of naive in this space. And we're also going to have our challenges too, right? As we grow and scale. But I think if the core identity of the platform is coming to a place where you get to, be your authentic self, really share, but also find something to laugh at, something that lifts you up, something that you can relate to each day, and it lifts you up, and you're like, man, that helped me get through my workday, or that's something funny that I can share with my friend group, or things like that. Then we're definitely doing our job. I definitely feel like conversation and real-time conversation, when you talked about your experience with watching, there's an event and then there's event when you're, live tweeting or whatever it was. That I think is something we're really going to shine at, because I come from an entertainment background, HBO, Showtime, and then Sony and Def Jam before that. This is what 95% of the conversation online is about. It's actually not politics. It's actually not, some of the stuff that gets the most headlines. It's like, we're talking about the NBA finals. Yeah. We're talking about, anime. We're talking about, one of my favorite little communities on Spill is Book Spill, which is so like, delightfully nerdy and, just like, but they are like recommending books for each other. And what are you reading? And, they're spilling a picture of the book with the, all this stuff. And people are coming back for that. So I think it's about community. I think a lot of, especially the younger audiences that are joining the platform, the most active age group on Spill right now is 25 to 30, which, stands in contrast, to where it was at Twitter, where it's more 35 to 45 right now. And I think they are, all the feedback is we missed the community era of social media. Yeah. All we got was algorithms and influencers and ads and all that kind of stuff. And not to say that we won't, have some of that at some point, but we really want it to be like, I can come here, find my tribe, find the people that are into that super specific thing that we all love, and get to know each other that way and build relationships.
And you foresee us Spillionaires getting paid for the spills?
Yeah, that was always something that we set out as a part of our mission, right? We wanted to accomplish three things. We wanted to make a space that's fun, right? Like fundamentally, you're going to come in there, you're going to have some fun, you're going to see some jokes, people are going to be hilarious, riffing off each other. Two, we wanted it to be safer, right? We want, we're building a lot of technology that really hasn't been built before to make that possible in a much more effective way than I think anybody's really been as intentional about before. And then number three, we wanted people not only to be, rewarded, but also credited, right? That's been a big issue, especially with culture makers online, and especially Black culture makers online and other marginalized groups that, coming up with lexicon, coming up with Riz, or coming up with the Renegade, or coming up with these things. And then suddenly you see it on Jimmy Fallon, and it's not the people who authored it at all. And then it has to become this whole thing. This happens constantly, right? And there's no perfect systems for that yet, but I think the platforms have a lot of responsibility to be intentional about that. And that's something that we're being intentional about from jump. So it's both credit, but it's also getting rewarded. Those are two things we are deeply working on right now.
I can use the N-word, right? I can write nigga on Spill, right?
You can.
Why do you say it like that?
Well, let's talk about it. Owned speech, owned language is an important part of the Black experience, period. And of course, it's got to be part of Black experience online, right? We can't say we're, catering, to our community if we are trying to like limit our language in a way that when we're using it in a way that's like, and term of endearment, or at least communal. Positive, right?
Yeah.
Communal, right? So that is different than somebody else who's not, using, who's not licensed, let's call it that way, to use that type of terminology, because it's not their lived experience, or, it's being used as a way that's, at minimum ironic, at worst, it's hate speech, right? Yeah. We don't tolerate any of that.
So I don't know if you saw, because you came out with a video that was like, be good, respect the house, respect the crib, be good to your fellow Spillionaires. And you made the point, this is for everybody. And I read that as, he's saying it's for us, right? Because usually when we say it's for everybody, that means it's for us, right? And at least one Black creator on TikTok was like, well, wait, I don't know if you saw this. He was like, well, I thought it was for Black people, but number one, he said it was for everybody. And number two, is he even Black? And I'm like, wait, is something wrong with my Black radar? Because I'm like, I assumed he was Black the first time I saw him. Why are you even asking the question? So that kind of threw me off. But a lot of people saw that and were commenting on that. And so, when you say it's for everybody, you mean it's for us.
Well, let me clarify a couple of things just for the record. So first, yes, I'm Black. I know I'm a light bright. Mark Founder's light bright. We're Black. Our team is majority Black. I was born in North Carolina, grew up in the Northeast, Massachusetts, small little towns.
Wait, where in Massachusetts?
Amherst, Massachusetts.
I know
mostly.
about Amherst.
Kinda, a little crunchy, liberal, small little liberal college town.
Yes.
Shout out to Amherst. But yeah, and then I moved to New York for college and was in Brooklyn for many, many years. So
where in Brooklyn?
Crown Heights mostly. Yeah,
okay.
Crown Heights and Flatbush.
Okay.
Yeah, that was like my. I think when you find your adopted hometown,
Sure.
like Brooklyn.
Yes,
that's me. Like that was the
yes.
just walking around there and being able to see people that look like me everywhere, and everybody's creative and everybody's just it's a vibe. I mean, in many ways, Spill is kind of the Brooklyn of social media.
Oh, hell yes, it is. It definitely is.
Y'all can go to Times Square, go have fun over there, but this is where the vibes are.
But the team is Black.
Yes, we are almost. I won't say 100%, but yes, we are majority Black. We've been very intentional about not just, saying who we're building for, and me and Davaris obviously coming from these communities, but like intentionally making sure that who's building the platform, reflects the communities that we are here to serve. So Black folks, queer folks from our team, our lead vendor, shout out to our lead funders, Mac Venture Capital, Black-owned firms. Shout out to Marlon Nichols and Charles King and everyone over there. Many of our vendors are Black and or queer. We're very intentional about how we're doing all this. So let me clear all that up. So yes, we are that. I think I'll give you more context, and I think this was tough for people because it was probably the first time many of them were like seeing me in this moment, right? So we have all these, people over the July 4th weekend, right? Discovering Spill, and obviously Black Twitter's hype, but it was much broader than that, right? Like you said, TikTok, LinkedIn was buzzing, all these people were like, oh, what's going on over here? And I think there was some misunderstandings from some headlines that we didn't write, that we had made Spill exclusive to Black people, as in nobody who isn't Black could get access to the platform, which was incorrect, right? And there's a difference for building something for a community. And I'll be, again, super clear. We built Spill, are building Spill for Black communities, for queer communities, other marginalized groups. You come to Spill, you're going to see Black people, queer people flourishing. That is a core part of the mission. But it is not literally we are excluding everybody else. If you are down for that mission, if you are interested in discussing culture in real time, Spill is open to you as well. And those were the words that I used, that I could understand how, in the context of everything, if people hadn't heard from me before, hadn't read the articles that we've been putting out for the last 7 months, it might be like, well, what's going on here? But I would also say the reason I put out that video was because we needed to make sure that everybody was being respected in the community, right? We don't have to, like, Spill is a very Black space,
yeah.
And that's part of the mission, and that's intentional, of course. And that is our intention, to continue to grow and build this as a Black space, as a queer safe space, right? For sure. But other people are going to join, and we need to treat them with respect as well. And that was the point of the message. And I think that got a little tripped up for folks. So I understand, that this is new, right? Black founders, going back to your startup point, less than 2% of all venture capital goes to Black founders. We don't get a lot of this. And then talk about Black women, it's a fraction of that fraction. It's insane.
Yeah.
So I promise y'all, we know exactly what's going on, but I want to make clear that, the intention was Spill is a community where whoever's there, respect them, right? If you aren't into, as we like to say, if someone's not your cup of tea, we have block functions. You don't have to follow them. Curate your own experience. Totally fine. But respect.
So you bring up the VC point, which I think is really valuable, because there's a lot of people who have their own dreams and their own companies they want to build. And getting, you guys got $2-3 million from folks. I'm sure you maybe gotten some more. So just how does one go about, I have an idea, and getting a couple $1 million from the VC community to start making it happen? That is hard for Black and brown folks, and you have done that. So what advice do you have for other folks who want to do something, not necessarily social, but just something?
Yeah, 100%. And this is, again, one of the things that we want to model, right, is not coming from a place of lack in these spaces, but we're pioneering. We really are. I really look at what's happening now, and we're not the only, Black-owned startups that are, doing amazing things. Slutty Vegan. Shout out to Pinky and Squire, Saint Laurent. All these companies who are on their way to like incredible valuations and businesses that really serve the communities and all that. But it started with being a master of our domain. Just to toot my own horn a little bit, I've been doing this social thing at a high level for a long time. I am not new to this. And my co-founder, Tavares, has been building and scaling really complex technological systems, whether it was cloud software for Microsoft, or he was the PM at Visco building that when they had that moment. And when he came to Twitter, he was doing the same thing. So we were masters of our domain, from jump. And that's really where it starts. And then, it's really just understanding that, in these environments, networking is everything, right? So we try and keep an open door, and we want to, really not just be an example, but also be a leg up, for all Black founders, minority founders, female founders to come and flourish, not just on Spill, but with us. So that's a big piece of it. It's the networking, right? You have to get out there and talk to people. And that's really hard for our communities, right? There's not a lot of us. Where do you find us, right? So you have to really hunt and search. But that's, again, a reason why we're building platforms like Spill. And then I think the third thing is, just understanding that, you're going to need to build more than anything, right? Ideas are great, but it's all about making. And that's the one thing that I've learned over the past 8 months, that if we had just let Spill be this, couple of slides and a deck and all of that, we don't arrive at this moment. We had to build. We had to put ourselves out there and get feedback. And I know it might seem like we just had like a, sort of an explosive moment a couple of weeks ago, but we've been at this for over 8 months, testing and learning and getting feedback, and people telling us,
that's not
and
a very long time.
I know, relatively speaking, but again, our experience for the 10, 15 years doing this before, and then just knowing that, as you said, we are just at the beginning of this journey. This is going to continue for years on into the future, and we know we're going to have to continue to get that feedback. I think that's the pathway. But it's not easy at all.
I mean, one thing you were able to do that somebody who wants to go to the VC community and get money needs to be able to do: state a problem that the VC will understand is a problem, and then how you will solve that problem.
100%. And again, going back to the building piece, it's proof points, right? Like we were able to raise because we put our vision out there, which takes just courage and guts, right? It's it. Anyone who's a creator who's taken an idea, it's an incredible act of faith, right? This thing that's in your head, and let me put it out there, and let's see if anybody, one, cares, two, finds it useful, right? Because a lot of people could have diagnosed the same problems that we're diagnosing. The problem really isn't that unique. Is it the right time? Is it the right team? And is it the right solution technically, to really deliver on it? And that's what every pitch boils down to. So focus on those things and have great answers, and you have a good shot.
When somebody or a group of somebody's gives you $2-3 million to go fulfill your vision, do you feel immense pressure? Like, now we gotta make this happen.
Well, and I think this is where, for anybody who's contemplating building something from the ground up, I encourage you to get a good co-founder. Probably my best decision was choosing and asking the right person to do this with me. And I just want to shout out Tavares and the extended network that he has, because he had done this before. Tavares has raised money for startups, and was a great guide for me. And he was like, this is what you need to know as a CEO. These are the things that you're going to, here's how you set up payroll, all these types of things. And so I would say picking a great co-founder is the first thing. And so when we did raise, it was really helpful to understand that raising money is not a goal, right? It's helpful, right? But ultimately you have to make the thing and have to get out there and get people to use it, get the feedback, continue to iterate. that's really the victory. So while we were proud of ourselves to be able to do this, especially in the time that we were able to raise, right? Like, I know relatively it seems pretty fast, but it was incredibly stressful. In February, my appendix almost burst. I had to have emergency surgery. I think it was like a Sunday I had the surgery, and by Monday morning we were back on calls, taking meetings, all this stuff. It's tough. It's no joke, but I love it. I'm so happy. I would not want to do anything else with my life right now. I feel so blessed.
So wait, I want to know why you landed on Spill, but also what was the number 2 choice? Like what just finished out of the money?
There was some bad ideas. I will take credit for most of them. We talked about Spill as part of, honestly, it all happened very organically. Dee and I were actually texting each other. This is probably like a couple of nights after I had gotten laid off, and we were like, okay, we're doing this. Okay, what is this?
So as soon as you got laid off from Twitter, you were like, let's do our own thing.
100%. Literally that night I called him, and I was like, November 4th, I was like, we're doing this. It wasn't even, I knew I was going to do this. I had just clear conviction. It was just time to build. It was like, I'm sick of seeing the same thing over and over again. It's not going to change unless we change it. It's one of those moments. And so I hit D, and he was like, all right, let's do it. And so we were talking about everything. We were talking about, how do we make it safer, right? We were talking about large language model AI before this was like a buzzword, before ChatGPT and all that stuff blew up. We were like, okay, there's going to be the big version of that, but who's training it for our community? No one, probably. Let's do that, and let's do it with our community, right? Like, it only makes sense. So we talked about that. We talked about, creator credit and monetization, all those things definitely being a pillar. And then the name. I'll give Tavares all the credit. He came up with Spill. We were tossing around a few other names that...
Like what?
I think there was Say Less was one of them that got tossed around. That was like, I was like, but he's like, why do we want people to say less? We want people to say more, and all this stuff.
Right.
But I think Spill hit for a couple of reasons. I think that the thing that everybody should know, right, is that it comes from the Black queer community, right? Like, spill the tea, spill your truth, all of that. But Tavares actually talked about, Tavares lives in the Bay, and we talk about, in the community, putting people onto, real spill, real game, passing along knowledge, passing along wisdom, passing along information that's really critical, that can help people really be successful. And that was really the depth to it, that I was like, okay, cool. Because we didn't want it to just, tea is sort of gossipy, and maybe it can be a little salacious, and, can sometimes have negative connotations. But as you can see on the platform, tea is your truth. Tea is your way to sort of have community and share that information. I mean, you've seen some of these spills now where, one of my favorite handles is, for Black girls, and it's just these affirmations every day for Black women. I think it's one of our most popular, handles on the platform right now. And it's just real spill, it's real game. And that was really where why we landed on the name and why we felt so good about it.
What are some of the biggest challenges that would keep you up at night? Like, your next 6 months, keep you, we want to keep growing. We understand that's an iceberg. We got to get past that.
Whew, where do we start? I think the number one thing, there's a litany of challenges I could run down, but I'll say that the number one thing that I think is most important for us is to remember that we are just at the beginning of this journey. We're being compared to platforms that have had, years to develop. Massive platforms that are worth billions of dollars, and incumbents that are worth trillions of dollars, right? We're getting compared to as this, startup that's been alive for less than 7 months, really only been building, for the last 5. And we're in those same conversations. But we have a lot to build. And so I think it's not, over rotating into like, oh my God, blah, 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 because there's always these things and these comparisons. So I think it's just staying focused on the mission, focused on our community, continuing to build, blocking out noise, blocking out negativity, That's our biggest challenge is staying focused.
All right, let's go back to Twitter for a second, because part of why I personally was so open about what is it? I mean, specifically because there was a weekend when Elon was like, you're only going to be able to see 600 tweets or something if you're not paying. And then if you're paying, you can see 6,000 a day. I was a heavy Twitter user, like 30, 40 tweets a day was nothing to me. So, I mean, I'm like, you're blocking me looking at 600. You're basically telling me get out. Like, what are you doing? And people are talking. I saw 2 people talk about Spill online and was like, how do I get in? Right. So, but I felt, even before Elon came, like the game changed, right? There was a time when I enjoyed Twitter, and then it became a constant fight. And I'm like, I'm not even talking to black people the last several years. I'm not even talking to black people really anymore. I'm getting a lot of frogs, a lot of MAGAs. I'm having arguments that I don't want to be having, rather than discussions that build that I do want to be having. What happened? What's gone wrong over there?
Whew. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. I'd say first, there's, the game has changed, right? Like social media has kind of gone from, you remember like the early 2010s when it was like social media is going to save us all, right? Everybody was like, we forget that wasn't that long ago. It's a decade, good grief now, but it was like post-Obama, people were like, oh, social media is, enabling revolutions, which is true, right? It enabled Arab Spring and, Occupy for what that was worth.
BLM.
And obviously Black Lives Matter, the, Love Wins movement, marriage equality, obviously Me Too, especially Twitter, enabled so many of these conversations that were never going to get, the attention they deserved, right? Especially from the mainstream, from media in general, right? And Twitter's connection to journalism and to storytelling and to adding that depth, I think was truly singular and unique. And I think it really started with that. I think it started with the journalists, right? And the sort of, folks like yourself. I don't think properly being taken care of, if I'll be honest. And when we talk about the term quote unquote creator, right? Like that gets kind of been tossed around for the last 5 years. It's like, oh, I'm a creator. I want to be a creator. On Twitter, the creators are journalists, right? The Phil Lewises of the world, the youth of the world, the Kara Swishers, all of that. And that sort of depth to stories that we never really got before, and especially at the speed that we got, starting to get what's the right word, sort of recontextualize it into falsehoods. Like it was started to get so difficult to tell the difference between, let's call it what it is, some of the previous administrations, claims that this is false, right? Like that there's no facts, that there's like those voices being set against other voices who actually do have the facts, who do this professionally, starting to cloud it in people's minds and not being able to address that. That's, I think, when we really started to see like, okay, this is causing maybe more problems than it's solving. And then I think going down to the last few years, right? Twitter, let's be honest, was never a great business, right? It was struggling, and I think when you look at contemporaries like Meta and, all that stuff, it was difficult. There was always, has been documented, activist investors trying to take it over and people trying to, remove senior leadership. And, it was really difficult, I think, to run a stable organization. So I think all those things contributed to, when Elon arrives, right? A lot of the things that he pointed out were correct, right? The platform did have some issues, but I don't think he's helped.
No.
Those issues, respectfully.
No, well,
I mean, he's exacerbated them.
Let's go a little deeper in this, because I think at some point I realized, as a writer, I'm always like, how can I be clear? How can I make sure my idea gets into your mind, what I'm trying to say? And at some point I realized on Twitter, I have to have a higher bar. I can't just write something that I think you'll understand. I have to write something that you won't misunderstand, right? Because there's purposeful Twitter became if I tweet, I love sunrises, and people will be like, why do you hate sunsets? I didn't say that, but that's what you're getting. And I have to militate against that and be like, I also love sunsets. And like, well, now I've said nothing because I'm just saying everything is great. So now nothing has been said. So, and I was like, is this a function of I'm talking to 200,000 people and inevitably some of them will say, I'm taking this word in this direction instead of that. It's a complicated way of communicating.
Well, and let's just be honest, right? Like when this microblogging site was created in 2006, I don't think anyone had any idea that it would be deciding geopolitical concerns, right? It just wasn't built for that.
No.
It just wasn't built for that.
Yeah.
And that's why we need a new generation of platforms that learn from these things. And there's a lot of good stuff, right, that you can take from it. Like you said, empowering various voices, enabling communities, especially for folks who might have felt marginalized their whole life in their, in their immediate IRL community. It might be like, there's not a lot of people like me. Social media has been incredible for finding your tribes, right? But the systems that were designed 15, 20 years ago are not sufficient. We need new solutions, and they cannot just be clones. They have to be evolutions, and that's what we're focused on.
I mean, when I look at what Elon has done at Twitter, not in a very short period of time, I cannot think of an analog of somebody coming into a major American corporation and changing it and ruining it that rapidly.
Yeah. It's listen, I can only speak as somebody who worked there right as that transition was happening. And I think there's a couple of things that people get wrong, right? I think number one, the people that worked at Twitter, the employees at Twitter, and many of them who are still there today, are some of the most incredible, thoughtful, hardworking people you will ever meet. And if you've talked to them, the tweeps, as they've been affectionately called, and we call each other, it was singular because you had a tech company that really cared about and was fairly literate in a lot of ways when it came to culture, right? Like understood that social media is people and tech. It's not just tech. It's not something that you can just code your way out of, purely. You need to understand what people are saying and what people need. And I think that's been the biggest issue. And it's not, I don't think it's just unique to Twitter. I think a lot of other platforms too aren't necessarily as culturally literate as they are technically. And that's what the next wave of social media needs to be able to be. We like to say there is no, technical competency and cultural competency are not mutually exclusive at Spill. And that's why we're going to win.
Interesting, because not just Twitter, all over the place, we see people come to social and they show a different side of themselves, right? Mm-hmm. On Twitter, they are comfortable to show their evil, attacative side, right? Instagram, they're pretending, I'm rich and everything is great. I have no problems. But they're not really giving you their real self. And you kind of wonder, how do we get to a social media space where people feel comfortable to be a little bit more of their real self? I'm not showing off. I'm not, engaging my meanness. I'm being me, who I would be. If we met at brunch, we would how can we get to that?
100%. I think that was one of the core ideas too that we had coming in, was thinking about Spill as, like you were saying earlier, a city or even a club, right? Something that it's a privilege to be a part of. Yes. You are not entitled to be on Spill. It is a privilege. And if you were walking into a physical establishment and you were antagonizing the other patrons, or you were just walking up to somebody and saying some wild stuff, or, taking your shirt off, or whatever it might be, that wouldn't fly. You'd be gone. We got bouncers for that. So we're treating Spill the same way. And I think establishing those norms and ultimately, I think rewarding that behavior, right? Like that's something we're also working heavily on, as some tools and systems where it's like not just the stick, right? Not just like you do this bad thing and then you get kicked out, but more like, what does it mean to actually be like a positive contributing member of, our community and the broader sort of, Spill ecosystem. We've got a lot of really fun ideas that I think are going to make a huge difference because people do what they get rewarded for. And, when you're on, other platforms that I won't get into deeply, sometimes you get rewarded for being nasty. You get rewarded for being, divisive or questioning things that are obviously, through any normal, lens, like obviously clear. But like you said, well, you didn't say you didn't like pancakes, but you said you like waffles. It's like, what are we doing? Why? Let's not incentivize that. Let's incentivize these other things that people really need. I got a whole left turn we can go into about men and masculinity. I've been reading a lot about that too, because a lot of the stuff that we see on these platforms, that some of the nastiness, not exclusively, but comes from a lot of like young men, who are trying to find their voices, trying to find where they belong and all this stuff. And it's like, we need better models, for how to do that in a positive way that creates value. And that's one of the things that, we're going to be focused on too.
Part of this is a question about Spill, but because I don't want to talk about Twitter too much more, but part of what made Twitter, when it was hot, so necessary is it seemed like everybody was there. The president, LeBron, everybody. Do you need that sort of newsmaker and celebrity to come be part of Spill so you can get to whatever cultural goals you're trying to get to? Do we need Kamala and LeBron spilling so that we can get to that?
LeBron, holler at us. Come through. You would love Spill. You would love Spill, bruv. Maverick too, the whole gang. Rich Paul, come through. The truth is, no. I don't think it's dependent upon celebrity or those types of things, as you can see, right? Because the problem isn't that we don't have enough, content from celebrities on social platforms or ways to get at them. I think the true problem is, do we have spaces that are fun, that are safer to be ourselves, right? Especially as Black folks and queer folks, right? It is treacherous. Like, to not have to scroll past racism every third post is a revelation for people. I think it's even more powerful than I anticipated it would be. It's like, I saw one tweet of someone who was like me on Twitter, and it's like this like angry troll devil image, and then the other half of it was me on Spill, and it's like, grand rising, my like inspirational,
Yeah.
And I think that's really what we have the opportunity to do, and our challenge is to be able to scale that intentionally. And I think it is about making sure that there's spaces, right? It's not just one big mashup of people, but there's spaces that you can go that's very intentional to find your tribes, find your communities, whether that's around art or music or food or books or just Touré stands, whatever it is, you can find it on Spill.
It's funny because I've dabbled on Threads a little bit because I wanted to see what that was and run into some of the people I see on Spill, and it'll be like, you didn't see me here. Right? Like we really are over there, right? Right? You didn't see me in a white club. I really live in a black club. Don't out me.
Well, but I think that's the thing, right? I saw a Spill where someone was like, Spill is a place where I can come and I don't have to code switch.
Yes.
Right. Which I thought was super profound, and
but I'm waiting for as it grows, because Black Twitter was beautiful, but it was also there was a schism in the community, right? And there were times when folks were like, you blue checks, blah blah blah, and the blue checks would be like, why are you attacking me, right? And I'm sure we said things that the other folks were like, we don't appreciate when you say it. So then you wonder at some point, do you have kind of two kinds of spillers? And some folks are like, like what's going on with them? We don't really like them, the moneyed spillers of the whatever.
Yeah, listen, as any community evolves, right, and especially as it grows, you have, different groups with different needs. But I think, the point of Spill, right, is community first. It's so that you, Touré, can experience and participate, in community, in a digital social space that is natural to you in the same way you would connect with, other folks, in real life, and that's going to look different for different folks. And let's also be clear. Obviously, Black folks are not a monolith. we got the blurs, we got the ratchet folks, we got all kinds, and so we need spaces for all. And that's the beauty of these types of platforms, is we can make those spaces for everyone.
Do you plan on doing some sort of verified or blue check sort of thing?
Yeah, I think the important thing is to disconnect blue check from status versus authenticity. I think that's where the whole verified thing got messed up, because it became a literal badge of status that, like, I am a first-class citizen of this platform versus I am actually who I say I am, right? And that's what we have to do, practically speaking, especially when you scale, because of impersonations and all kinds of things. We don't want people thinking they're following another Touré and it's not the real Touré. Or anything of that nature.
But I think really important.
It's super important. But we don't want to. What we don't want to do is turn it into a status game. Like, oh, I got whatever we end up calling it. I'm a blue check on Spill or something like that. I don't think that creates as much value as people think it does. I think that was one of the miscalculations from some of these other platforms, that people would pay, for, some sort of like status, which is ridiculous.
One tiny bit of feedback that I would give, and I wonder if other people think about this, because I spent a lot of time creating publications in college and in my 20s or whatever. So I think a lot about the way that words align on a page. And when I write a spill, you give me this font and it looks this way. And then when I publish it, the font gets smaller. And I was like, I would have changed the word so it was all on one line, or the two lines met and there's no widow. And I don't know if you're aware of that, if you're addressing that, what do you think about that?
No, I think it's great feedback. And this is exactly why we do beta, right? Like, we wanted to, when we initially set out to do this, the other thing Devaris and I talked about was, there's never going to be another Twitter, or there's never another anything in this world. Yeah. We need to do something that's next, right? And challenge ourselves to really pull something special out, from a design standpoint, from a community standpoint, from a technological standpoint that hasn't been seen before. And let's really push it. And so, the text being so big, and the spills, having the design that they have, and the interface and the colors, it's different for sure. And it's not perfect, by no way, shape, or form. And that's why we need feedback from the community, especially folks, like yourself, who are incredible with words, and have been for a long time, because we want this to be effective, right? We want this to be a place where communication, like you said, is effectively delivered and effectively received, right? You're able to create and you're able to receive with the right intentions. So that's great feedback for us.
You do make me think, because Twitter, I can do a writing game all day long, right? Like, now you're in my wheelhouse, but you're making me think, I gotta find the right image, either, that fits with it. I did one that I was really proud of, and my son was looking over my shoulder. He's like, the words don't fit with the picture, but I'm like, that's the point. Because I wrote, "We deserve reparations," and then I found a GIF of a Black woman just like twirling, right, in this rainbow dress, and it sort of suggested like freedom and care, like carefree and like joy. And I'm like, yes, like nobody would think to put those two things together, and that's like what gives it more. Like 1 + 1 is 3, and I was like, yes. Like I started to be like, this could be my little way of doing my little spill style. But you make, like the game that you're asking me to play is really interesting. It's really working on you.
Totally. And I'm so happy to hear that. And I know, especially with the litany of other projects that are, coming out, it's like some people are reverting to like the most basic, like, we will give you exactly the same experience. Like over here, you literally don't need to learn anything different. We will make this so easy for you, and da da da. And I'm like, I just think that's a miss. I think it's a missed opportunity, to really advance and move things forward. And it's a risk to ask people to, create something new. But I think when we look at the history of, just social platforms, every platform's had its own language, right? Every platform's had its own.
But you're a millennial,
style.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, it's a little bit easier for you guys as digital natives to learn new things. For Gen Xers, it's like, oh my God, it's a new game. Oh my God, how do we do this? It took me a year to understand, how do I fit on Instagram, right? It took me like 6 months to figure out, what am I going to do on TikTok? I got it a little faster, but for you, it's easier. For us, it's like, oh my God, how do I do this?
I know. And it's, especially with so many things coming out, so it's like, where do I go? All that stuff. But I think long term, for what we're building, having new ways for people to express something that's unique, because we want people to not just come to Spill, because it's, the community and the mission and everything we've laid out, but also you're going to see a different side of yourself on Spill. You're going to express the Touré you get on Spill is probably unlike the Touré that exists in any other digital space. And while there's an initial I got to develop some new muscles, over the long term, I think we'll be looking back 5-10 years from now at your spills and be like, oh man, remember those early spills? And now look at you, and you're like, fluid meme. You got some TED talk somewhere where your spills are in the background and it's big and it's visual, and it's, you publish a book of spills. Oh, that's actually.
Ooh.
There you go. Wouldn't it be dope? That'd be a dope coffee table.
The last thing I ask everybody who comes on the show, what does being Black mean to you? And, it is your love of the community, your pride in our cultural power and innovation is so clear. And you have made this whole new platform for us to be Black and happy and joyful, and but what does it mean to you?
First word that comes to mind is home.
Yes.
And coming home. And my father passed away 2 years ago from COVID. And I actually didn't meet him until I was 20 years old. My parents split when I was young, but my family roots are very deep in North Carolina. We go back definitely to slavery. And one of the things that I spent about 3 months in North Carolina taking care of him before he passed. And, it's one of those things. You lose a parent, right? It's super difficult. But I think especially because, culturally, right, it matters so much to me, because it's my connection to who I am and how I exist in the world, and, have really had to build that for myself, as many of us do. And so when, I was talking to some of my aunties who started reaching out when they heard, and I met so many of them. It was so amazing. And I was really obviously torn up, and they were like, don't be sad, because he's going home. And down south, and I'm sure other Black communities, we don't talk about funerals, we talk about homegoings.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed my entire life when she told me that. She was like, he's going home. And in some ways it was a way for me to really know that, that's always been there. It's always been my home. It always will be my home. And so that's what Black culture, Black community, all of that means to me. Home.
Beautiful.